to make what I call a winged form, with Georgia on my mind was a title for one particular piece that ended up inside the back cover of Woodturning magazine after I got in an argument with Mark Baker about safety issues around this thing. I'll talk more about that in a moment. These are a tiny example of the dozens upon dozens of these I made while learning how. These happen to be the ones that were in this tiny bowl when I went looking for something to show off. There are two basic kinds that I've done several of. This is what friend Elisa calls a hobbit house. It is somewhat backwards to the rest of them, in that the opening is on the downside of the curve. All kinds of silly little things like that floating around. This is the smallest one I brought. I made these down to earring scale. In fact, I have a whole plate full of those I need to finish. I don't know where it is, but started out like this, turning just a curved off-center piece for the purpose of making sails for a funny little model boat I was making. The off-center part is what makes it a little bit trickier than if it were a square piece, because instead of hitting twice as you go around, on the outer part of this you're hitting one time. So you're hitting half as many hits, and your screw-up multiplies itself just exactly twice as many times. While the tool is in the air, or while the wood is not there, you get the unfortunate effect of being able to feed the tool past the wood. I hope I don't demonstrate that, but I probably will at least once. I'm going to move over by this little toy lathe we got here. I want you to see how this is held on here. And my photography crew is getting in place. All right. I marked one spot on the back of here, roughly equidistant from these two sides. Then I moved it twice. You can see by my little multiple hole pattern. It is clamped on between the face of a big Vic Mark chuck and a double bearing. This happens to be a Powermatic tail center, but solid pieces. You try this on a mini lathe with a little chuck, and I don't want to be in the space you're trying to do. The tail centers that just have a cone will go right through this and split it, and then you have this chunk of wood going across the room. You need the stop on your tail center, something that stops this from penetrating. And then you need to get Larry or somebody, the teeth, come and lock all these things in place. If you're on a Vic Mark, you might get away with not tightening this. Don't try. There's going to be enough shaking. Lock the tail center. Lock everything. And check it again, and then check it again. Then I'm going to try first. I have the thing up here drawn. I'm going to be taking a great deal of weight out of that here right away. As of now, I can get to 400 RPM. So I'll be making my second spot, my design cut, getting rid of a great deal of that, hopefully expeditiously. Whatever the heck that means. Okay. So here we go. Fire this thing up. I've never spent any time turning on a lathe with a tachometer, which they call something else. Creeping up here. If you turn your lathe too fast, this much off center will walk it right across the floor. I have about 6 inches in either direction and disaster comes. So I'm turning this quite slowly, creeping it up. I was able to get 500. You start to feel this somewhat wobble. Part of that's that this is on wood. Part of it's just because big off-center thing flailing. I want to stop there. I'm at about 400 RPM, which is a horrible speed to turn at. But I can feed this in, hopefully. If I hold the tool at the right height, it doesn't bounce back and forth. I've just barely got level rubbing. I want to put some weight down on this so it doesn't bounce. The 60-degree Ellsworth grind. At least the original grind on this was done by David, so it must be perfect. Bear's not online. We'll come back out here and make a couple more passes and look at design features. Are we bouncing up there? Oh, good God. I don't know why I have this thing on. It makes more echo. Whoa, 450. This really is not possible to see what I'm doing. Try to take too big a bite, you simply stop it. Did that show nicely? The bark just departed. It's going to 9 out of 10 times, so I would consider it kind of a silly thing to do. That's why I was doing it. But I'm looking for all the revs I can get away with. Because it makes it easier. Because they can't push the civil land back to wood as easily. Going from both directions, I'm trying to have a double guided cut. There's a little bit of impossible in this because, of course, I'm out in the air about half the time. But I try anyway. Where I'm on a flat floor, I might try cranking this faster, because if I walked, it wouldn't make any difference. You can sometimes go past the vibration. Don't try this at home unless your lathe is heavily weighted down. When Don's weight at home, 50 pounds made all the difference in the world. It was quite stunning how almost 500. Like many other things, slow is fast. Don't try to do it. Okay. There are two very important lines right here. One is where the chuck is going to go on here, which I think is kind of critical. It needs to fit your jaws pretty appropriately, and the surface that the jaws butt up against needs to butt up against them. It can't be almost, it can't be some other direction. This cut behind there is called a design cut. It lets me make a curve that I can then see where the curve goes when I turn this around. If I just expect to leave wood that's inside this chuck on, three things go wrong. I can't see. The wood is crushed by the chuck, both in this direction and a little bit in that direction. And when I break the little chuck from off, I'm dead. I can't save it again. I have a little bit of room to save myself if I have to. If I manage to break that off. But mainly I want to be able to develop all the way through this side with it sitting out from the chuck quarter, maybe a little more. You can see it without it sticking out. You have no idea what the hell you're doing. Or I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Let me rephrase that. I have a pretty high grade of spectators today, so I have to remember they actually probably know how to do many of these things. It's just whittling away at the wood that isn't part of what you're making. I'm gripping this tool quite hard at the front, but I shouldn't need to. It's all part of keeping my hand on this side of the tool rest. My sort of argument with Mark Baker was he published a thing about turning off-center or square things and wanted you to put a board here so you couldn't get your hand in the end of that. If I hit myself with this sitting here and I've got my hand over here, my hand goes thunk, and I might cut myself, but I have my finger still on. Put something there that can cut against, and you're going to have real excitement trying to stop the bleeding and finding the finger and running, not my idea of fun. This knot is making an interesting issue here. Blown out pretty bad. I picked this chunk of wood because it had that there to see what had happened. So, nope, just about 500. I kind of enjoy having the tack. I wouldn't pay a nickel extra for one, but can't buy modern lathes without them. So. I don't think anybody in this club is crazy enough to try turning something like this on a lathe with step pulleys. I wouldn't even think about it. I need this relatively fine speed control. Okay, I'm almost down past that. And I'm almost down past that. So. That's 500 RPM, if anybody cares. I'm making light enough cuts that it's not slowing down at all. Here I'm cutting on the uninterrupted wood. Just do a push cut, which there are those who say I can't do with this tool, but oh well. Okay. Little pull. Almost. That major tear out is still down in there, a little bit there. I suspect everybody listening has a bottoming tool, a almost flat across down bowl gouge. Sometimes it is the right tool for going down through this curve, almost like cutting in the bottom, because I'm inside a curve. I'm going to make a try. Weight down on the tool, minimal contact with the wood. Not terrible. This tool is ground at some angle pretty close to 75 degrees. I have never measured it, but somewhere in that range. It could be at 87 degrees. The cut is at 45 degrees to the wood because of the angle at which I'm approaching the wood. So whatever clearance is more or less irrelevant. When people go to all the effort of sharpening a plane to 25 degrees and then present the blade at 45 degrees, I'm not sure why that's supposed to work. It does. You can actually go down to about 40 and the wood doesn't know a bit of difference. That I have tried. I'll try and get smoother through there. This is not a project for somebody who's real, I have to do everything with the bowl gouge proud. Project for the, I'll do whatever it takes to get her done. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but I'm cutting behind the center of this tool. And the actual edge is approaching at about 45 degrees to the wood. There seems to be a large object in the way here. There we go. And I made the silly mistake of deciding that Glenn Lucas wanted too much for his curved back negative rake scraper. So I took a regular round nose, big fat scraper and did the same thing. Would have been much cheaper to just buy one from Glenn. I was hours getting rid of surplus metal on this thing. But I have time. Money's hard to come by sometimes. We'll just try and smooth that up a little. I can just get to there. The beauty of this curved back scraper, which is primarily an interior bowl tool, is that it has all kinds of curves on it. And nearly a flat on that end and a fairly tight curve right beside that. I have some grain issues here I'm going to have to sand out. I'll probably trim this corner off because I don't feel like cutting that far. I could cut a little more off there. Nah, I don't want to waste the time here. I had done some flat cups on plates type thing and ran into our friend Stu Batty. I said, well, that'd be a great place for a negative rake scraper. And I went, Stu, you're crazy. It'll, it's big right there. No, great. Much as I hate to admit it, sometimes Stu is right. I see a corner I didn't quite get to. You can't take a lot of wood off with this. Or more precisely, you probably don't want to. Stop, please. Move back a little. You have to be on the flat part of the scraper. If you're on the other part, you're not strong enough. I'm not strong enough. So keep your tool rest back a little further than you might otherwise. Give that puppy all the speed you can get. Hold down on the tool and approach the wood gently. This is where the long handle justifies itself. Yeah, that's the fine one. Come on. Oh, shit. I'm just trying to get. I mentioned that these guards tend to be in the way, because they do. Another advantage of CBN. I'm just going to put a new burr on this with the finest stone that's here. And I'm not going to bother trying to match my entire back slope. We'll have to regrind this when I get home. Ah, there's a great deal more cut. If you watch, though, you'll notice that I'm actually getting shavings off here. Even this little bit of spalt and everything is not, I'm not taking off dust. A little too close. I have some pretty ugly tear out in this wood, and this is some salting. My at-home solution will be to soak that with nitrocellulose lacquer. Go away for about 20 minutes, come back and cut plastic. I didn't bring any, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to finish this today anyway, so what the heck. I have essentially cut the entire outer shape. I want to look at it and go, a little more curved there. I want this to be a little bit more distinct going into there, so cut it a better curve. If you don't stop and look, you have no idea what you're turning. If it's still spinning, all you're seeing is a blur. So stop and see where you are. This pretty grain here is one of the reasons I want to kind of stop right in there. Maybe I'll keep it. Maybe it'll blow apart. You have to take a little bit of opportunity to let it blow up on you. There it is. Go back to my Ellsworth couch. Go back down a bit. 500, and that's about all she has. That's too much vibration. I cannot put this tool where I need to put it because of that wing flying around out there. I would skew scrape with it. What I can do, get out my smaller, less elegant negative rate scraper and come across that surface. That would irritate the hell out of Allen laces. I guarantee. I just took the edge off the skew completely. Since I'm likely to use it as a skew at some time, I'm going to very quickly sort of put it back on. That's just saving yourself a later nightmare. A little bit of bump there. I'm just going to quickly clean that up. So can you move that so it shows the board behind me a little better? Whichever camera is showing. Whatever. I'm going to repeat Stu Batty's standard lecture about negative ray scrapers, more or less. If you really want to see the original version, it's online. Look up Stuart Batty, you'll find it. We have a tool rest back here. We have the wood coming by with a standard scraper, which would be this shape. I should have done that in pink. Oh well. On the outside, we want to be below center, so a catch moves you out of the wood. On the inside, we want to be above center, so the catch moves you out of the wood. You can't really get a bad catch if you're moved out of the wood. If you go the opposite way and come down below and get a catch, Katie, bar the door, get out of that room. When you go with a negative rake, I will now draw in pink. I've got this downslope, which I would have to build into the normal scraper anyway, built in, and I can actually pretty well work right on center. Still, a little above inside, a little below outside, just totally eliminates the chance of it grabbing. Tools grabbing are not quite the same as a catch, but they'll do until it comes along. I need to refine my, thank you, chuck fitment, which everybody wants to call a spigot. I've never been able to get water out of them. Or tenon. So I will do now. I carefully marked the exact size a while ago. I think I still remember where the marking is. I'm going to ask you, Larry, have you ever read the instructions that came with your chuck?
No.
The speed limits that they tell you to follow are, what's the technical term? Patently ridiculous. They're slower than you can turn. I am right at the speed limit for this chuck for a chunk of wood this size. If it were centered, if I did what Vicmark says, I'm kind of fond of Vicmark, but I really like to get things done sometime the same week. I'm just trying to trace for myself where I'm going to try and rough this in. It would be smarter, and hence something I would never do, to get a proper mechanical grip and really get down here and draw this line exactly the distance you want to be. But for our momentary purposes, at home, with the guard on this thing like it ought to be on this blade, I might move the tail center away. Oh, look, I have to change the chuck. Oh, come up here, you. I had this open to where these were just at the outside of the chuck body. You might notice that they now are sticking out a little bit. They do creep when there's nothing holding them. You don't want those sticking out very far if you like your knuckles. You will eventually get in their path. Now, I am ever so slightly big with my tenon. The only thing I don't like about my current method here is I don't have an absolute center spot on this side. If I loosen this up a little bit, let that push it in, tighten it again. My tenon is about half the depth of the jaws, could be 90% the depth of the jaws. Will be ever so slightly stronger. I could go down to a 16th of an inch. Still probably hold this. But I do not like the word probably very well. Quarter inch is adequate. I'm looking along here to see that I am flat against my flat as well as I can. In my shop at home, I have enough light to see exactly whether there's a gap there or not. It's aimed at me instead of over there someplace. Aimed at my work. Once again, make sure you're clear. So I have gotten pretty much that much cutting done. And it goes around like that. There's 4 different shapes on the outside of this. Basically a straight line, mild curve, fairly wild curve, and quite wild curve. These 2 curves, this curve and that curve, if I space this exactly the same, would be exactly the same curve. Only useful to know if you're trying to make a stand out of the thing, which would be cool, but I don't always remember. Oops. Just for a snake, I'd have holes in my feet. Let me show you the snake I saw over by our place a couple days ago. I have pictures. You have a long way to go here. Get that out of my way. First time you turn on the new lathe, expect to find yourself going, oh, that doesn't move the way it does on mine, even if it's the same brand. And just expect to spend a little time fiddling with it, because don't start with your $2,000 piece of wood. I would never do a thing like that. I picked up a basic 40 degree grind here in the interest of maybe we had a slightly crazy female turner demonstrate down here one time. Was bracing tool right in here against her femoral artery. If you're suicidal, do that. No blood. I won. It's real easy to forget this invisible stuff is out here. I just banged my knuckle with it, but no bleeding. I must be winning. When you decide to do something crazy like this at home, get a sheet of contrasting paper, cardboard, get enough light that you can see this against that contrasting piece of paper, and suddenly that becomes visible. I forgot to find one. $520, wow, I'm gaining on it. Tighten that up for real. I spend a lot of time telling students, get a nice light grip on your tool. It's not the perfect place for that attitude. Hopefully I've made a series of steps here that I can take each step and go on down into the center. I have to stop when I hit this wall. If I keep trying to cut into that wall, I make a horrendous sketch. I'm going to expand each step a little bit at a time. I can see the outside of my vessel, or my wing, whatever it is, all the way down here. So I don't have that fear of violating Bayer's law. The inside does have to stay smaller than the outside, but if you can see both sides, much easier. The remnant of the bark just took off and landed about where the second row of seats would normally be, which is why I normally would have that guard up where there's an audience here. Larry talked me out of it because there's no audience, and hell, it's his computer. Yeah, just a couple on it. No. I don't know if you can hear the difference online with the higher frequency bumping. Basically makes the bumping feel like less. Don mentions that it's mandatory to move the tool rest at least once while the lathe is running. This is not a good time to pull that stunt. I've seen battle swords that were no sharper than that corner. I'd just soon keep my fingers, so shut it off, move it, lock it, check your locking. Go ahead and recheck the other locking while you're at it. Check there, and it doesn't hurt a thing to take a snug on your chuck while you're at it.
And I would say in that regard, remember that the tool rest is a cutting tool.
Tool rest is a cutting board for your finger if you get between that and that chunk of wood. I have managed several times to get myself between the tool rest and the tool rest base when it gets thunked and knocked down. It looks like you pissed off a chihuahua. Straight through your hand, doesn't hesitate, and bleeds profusely and makes you say many, 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 many bad words. At least that was me. I've never quite gotten to the emergency room level, but I don't want to either. Okay, I have from there to there is all one pass, one direction kind of a thing. So I'm going to see if I can get under it, get a good solid aim. I am trying to steer with my hips. As we all tell people, you know, the more close you can come moving your whole body, keep your hips doing the work, the better off you are. And that's all very fine if you can make it work. Okay? If you need to use your arm muscles, get back on the back of the tool. Keep your arm in against your body as much as you can, and let your body do most of the movement. But don't be afraid because somebody says it's got to be tucked in against you to move the tool. You're mostly concerned about how the wood turns out, not about this turning muscle we've all grown. Thank you, Larry. That was a great opportunity. I'm going to move the tool rest handle back out of my way. Crank this up again. 200 or 300 pounds more machine would be I'm quite certain that Kristen would love to sell each and every one of you a Vicmark 300. Which I've not turned on a big one-way for years. It's nowhere near heavy enough for this. If I were going to buy a lathe specifically to doing this activity, the bigger Powermatic, the Vicmark 300. I find a serious. They're heavy enough. They weigh 1,500 and some odd pounds. Mass is a great friend in this instance. Once again, to my bottoming tool, I'm going to make a pass across and get rid of that rib and start in the other side. "60 RPM more than I was able to a minute ago." These should be exercises in tool control. And they would be more so if you could see what you're doing. Somebody made a ding in that tool rest, hardened steel and all, and I'm catching on it. Okay. Once again, that's just, I could continue like hell working at getting that smoother if I wanted to work at it for a long time. 2 minutes with a scraper and I'm done. When you're learning how to use the bowl gouge, do the extra work. When you're bored with that, there is a very important wood turning tool that I have not brought with me, even a bad sample of. You know, your 40 grit gouge comes in 56, 80, whatever you need. And while a lot of us like to brag, we start at 320. You need to start at 40 grit. Start at 40 grit. Get rid of whatever you're sanding, and then quickly you can move up a grit. If you're trying to sand away crud like this with 80 grit, you're boring yourself and accomplishing not a damn thing except boring yourself. This wing, I should be able to fuse tape.
I start sanding at 320. Try to quit by 4 though.
Yeah, I hate sanding that much myself. 3:30 is my stopping time. Whenever the local pub opens, I'm trying to get that. Woohoo! I just broke something. Just took a chunk out of right here. I let myself get in there too close. Oh, well, I can cure that. Mostly. Yeah, I'm going to have to plane that side a little bit. But I do have enough wood to come in a little tighter, so I will. Now that I can make this thing spin, that's 800 RPM. Oh my God. Well, I'm going to have to go back over and re-scrape. I have this tool rest a little bit high for scraping. I'm not altogether sure how that developed. Bring her down a bit. Just a bit. This is the best feature on this lathe. That tool rest adjustment is solid. Doesn't seem to have any vices I can find. Okay, so now I'm basically down to, I need to shape my vessel. I need to cut the rest of this curve. I have found a fairly nasty crack here. It's opened up since I cut this piece of wood this morning. Oh well. Go down and see what happens. But think about this. I'm basically, for the first inch, going in this way, turning the outside of a bowl. Then I'm going to be turning the inside of a bowl going that way. Then I'm going to be shaping around the top of that vessel form. And I'm going to change back and forth between 40 and 60. And I doubt I'll use my bottoming tool again up here. There it is. 9/16" spindle gouge is one of those tools everybody ought to have 2 or 3 of. I'll show you the advantage in it for a second, then I'll put her back away. It will clear shavings. If I would sharpen it, clear shavings better. I do not approve of platform sharpening. I do not approve of the lathe being in the way of the platform. Howsoever. Platform's what you got, you use it. And you get sharp. My grinder at home runs very, very quietly. So I frequently started at the beginning of the day, turn it off for lunch. There you see the problem with this tool. Doesn't take much to start it wanting to shake. Then throw a piece of wood out at you. The bowl gouge has, where did I put that just now? A 5/8 inch or half-inch bowl gouge has about twice as much metal out there by the edge. So it probably vibrates a quarter as much. Before 1980 or so, though, this is what you used to turn bowls, because these did not exist. The long and strong, deep-fluted gouge, which we miscall bowl gouge, is verifiably difficult shape to cut, sharpen. I recommend the jigs. Use them. They are not entirely necessary. But you will lose your shape if you do it without a jig very many times. This lets me just hang on to the back of the tool. The tool itself doesn't want to vibrate. So I actually have this something modern that works better than the old-fashioned way. You can be quite rude to the wood when this is especially sharp. And mostly get away with it. I forgot what the left hand does. Once you have bevel support following your cut around, this hand could wave at the girls down the street. It really is mostly down there to keep the tools from bouncing up and down. And with good bevel support, you have very little of that. I have a tremendous reach into here. Probably from here, 2.5 inches, from there 2. Not entirely satisfactory. The temptation to come out here and lock this into place, don't try to cut anywhere past that line that shows right there, and you can get away with it. I also ran into the fact that I want to go under there. I'm going to take some top off this because I have way too much. I realize now looking at it real quick. Also, don't ever lay your tools on the lathe bed. Lathe bed. They will fall off and hit your toe. I'm just going to take this down. About there's going to be my final height. I'm not sure why. and this tourist base has such an interesting time deciding which way to put the handle. But I seem to be having a horrible time remembering. So there's something different about it. I want to dive down into there. And oddly, I'm going to go with a slightly smaller tool so I can see my turn in. But I haven't relieved this tool very well. So I'm going to very quickly freehand grind it. Come back and reestablish my original angle on the very edge, more or less, I don't know. The angle is nowhere near as important as the shape. I want flat across here so I can reach without hitting the other wings. I want clearance around what I'm doing. Somehow there's an identifier on that that's exactly where I keep trying to look what I'm doing. Never mind. I should quit looking at that. We have a monitor screen about 4 feet out here. And I keep seeing this silly looking guy hiding behind what looks like a sheet of sheetrock or something. Oh well, it's not much different from that perspective. I'm going to start this curve in and quickly show you where you get into a problem. The city is long reach and I'm scraping wood off my bottom wall. I'm coming from this way. Some limited extent, making a sharper, more acute tool would let me cut further down into that, thank you, into that groove. But at some point I'm going to be hitting the tool out here or in here, and I can't cut down in there at all. I just have to say to myself, oh, poop, I can't cut down in there. So I invented what I describe as a buoy scraper. Whoever Jim Bowie's blacksmith is invented this. They didn't intend it as a lathe turning tool. This happens to be a real piece of garbage, cheap. It's supposed to be a spindle gouge from Harbor Freight, the very cheapest version. It's of no use in that mode, so I decided I'd grind it into something different. If I cut from here, I have 2.5 inches of this tool hanging out in the air. It's not strong enough. So what I'm going to have to do is sneak my tool rest in close. With this big machine, I feel fairly safe. The tool rest is going nowhere once I lock it down. If it did try to move, if it moves out that way, you blow your turning up. If it moves the other way, you cut a big groove in your turning. I have 2 models of this buoy scraper here. I have this little one, or this rather big one actually. Not the place to prove how far out you can reach. And it's dull. I knocked the corners off these so I could come over here Make a new burr. Make a new burr. Very carefully bring your hand around this side. And it's dull. This is called the cheapest tools, most expensive tools they sell at Harbor Freight are carbon steel. They're only expensive because they don't last they won't hold an edge long enough to do much of anything. And unless your time is free, that makes an expensive tool. This little puppy is made out of M4 tool steel. Mounted in a shaft. It is just dangerous. You can't really see where it's going. It's got something in there bouncing me. I don't know what that is. I'll take a look in a second. I have been known at this stage to discover that I'm making a little vessel in the wing. One or the other of them in good shape. I want the flow of this vessel shape to end up so that the bottom of the vessel and the bottom of the curve are the same piece of wood. I have to kind of stop and look. Look, what the hell's that? Cool. 1,000 RPM. To explain the screw up I just did, I let a gap open between the side of this and the tool rest and got the tool down into it. And it hit, and it moved itself predictably as all get out. Ouch. Once again, no blood, or the blood is staying inside, so I'm going to consider that a non-wound. I took a horrible chunk out of the side of this. So I'm going to come back and recut that. This is clumsy in there. Where is my rectifier tool here? See what I've got there. Yeah, still pretty much, got rid of the top part of that. I'm going to scrape on the inside of that with the outside of a spindle gouge. See if I got rid of the ugly stuff. One little spot there I need to work on a little more, a lot more. problem with scraping with the side of a gouge, it stays sharp for about that long. Oh, that's going to hurt. Fresh edge. There's still a pretty nasty burr down in there. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to come back here and scrape off my tool rest mark. Boy, that's noisy. Now I'm going to retighten the chuck. This is far more critical with wet wood because the water's coming out of the wood as you go.
Hey, Bruce, what is
Sure.
what is the wood you're turning?
I believe this to be a piece of very old box elder. I think it's been in my possession for, I don't know, 10, 12 years at least. Somebody brought it to some weird club down here and made it available for maniacs, and I finally got to it this morning. I have a bad chatter mark set up through here, which needs to be gotten rid of. So I'm going to try. That's not the tool I thought I picked up. Problem is, once you lighten the wood inside, it's real easy to get awful chatter marks. I'm going to use my really bad standard here, say, I can sand that out. And quit fooling with it. We don't want to spend the next 2 hours watching me try and rectify my bad cutting. Better anchored lathe, more speed, your cutting looks better. Do not, however, stand on this line while you're turning things fast. I've had one of these leave the lathe, go through under the guard, land 20 feet away, 8 feet above the ground, stuck into the coil spring that closes my garage. And I couldn't find it. It was, as far as I knew, it had evaporated. About 3 weeks later, I tried to open the garage and it wouldn't open. Now, Don has cleverly left us with a trap here. I'm just going to take this out and measure to make sure I have room to do what I want to do. Can't use this tool on this at this moment. All the way out, maybe. Don't leave your tool rest where this is going to be banging into it, or your tailstock, because you'll have your cut stop and you'll just wonder what in the world happened. And if you're like me, you'll break something, maybe a finger, who knows. Okay, this is not the perfect shape. I would have rather had a little bit more of a curve down to the bottom. I'm going to reform the top shape a little and do a real quick bit of hauling. Go that way, please. Clear. This is across here. You get more lathe bed at that angle than you do straight across. So you basically are welding this or melting this into the mass of the tool a little more strongly. Who's what? Well, Mike did what? Aha. So I would have to be talking out of the side of my head. What the hell happened here? I don't know. Oh, I know. I push up on my glasses, detach the microphone. My hair would never get in the way of anything, of course. Okay, I've lost it. Hang on here, children. I'll get this back together. Maybe. Find hole in head. I've often thought that many woodturners needed a hole in their head, but I've never thought of this particular use for one before. Don, can you hear me? Excellent. I'm going to redress myself here. Okay. I've had to remove the tail center so I can get where I want to work next. Everything becomes more hazardous. I've left it on there as long as I dared, but I can't get here and cut tail center in place. I like to leave that little point on there. Unless you like stabbing yourself, don't do that. Not even for a minute. I have no idea why I'm trying to turn at 600 RPM. And I know I can get past 1,000. I've made this tool quite pointy. It's not normally my desire. Here's a potential place to be really silly. Make a really small hole and make yourself a god-awful amount of extra work. If your name is David Ellsworth, you're required to do that. I don't believe that's my name. Is that your name? The only problem is if the hole is big enough to reach inside with anything somebody has on their person, you then have to make the inside smooth. Be warned, sometimes it's your 4-year-old daughter who reaches inside and says, "Daddy, that's rough." The previous message was a pre-commercial from Mr. Michael Roper, who knows exactly how that came about. Rope made the mistake of telling me that, well, nobody can reach in there to feel it anyway, while his daughter was standing about 5 feet away. Nobody can, huh? Okay. I'm going to drill a hole, but I'm not going to drill anywhere near the sides of what's going to be my finished hole. You make a lot of heat, your wood's going to crack, check, otherwise be obnoxious. I need to make sure I'm on pretty good on center, and I need to take my hopefully still sharp grease and spindle gouge and start drilling. It is not the correct shape. I need to clear a little bit of metal off the offside. Ooh, it makes it hot. Yeah. To use a drill to get to the bottom of this, use a smallish drill. Make sure you've rounded off the tip of it so you don't have a 45-degree cut in the bottom of your hole. Longer handle would work better. I have no question. At this point, I know I'm miles away, about halfway down there. So, fully down there, it's right there. Guesstimate. Yes, everybody owns a way to measure this, okay? I'm able to both drill and maintain bevel contact out into there. And yes, I could continue hollowing with the spindle gouge. I find it to be somewhat more risky than just getting a hollowing tool out. I'm going to clean up this upper lip. You're smart, you'll do that with a tool that's not boiling hot. This toy is basically the tool that David Ellsworth designed early in the 1970s or whatever. I made this one 3/8" drill rod, 3/16 cutter, cut round so it'll fit into a hole, glued in. When you grind these, be a little less energetic. I'm going to put a fresh edge on it because I can. Wall's in the way. For those of you who are just setting up a shop, that grinder is about as far away as it ought to be from your lathe. Any further, you're going to decide, I don't want to walk over there. It should be at the same center height as your lathe. We came close. It should be firmly fastened down so nobody wanders off with it. And it should have CBM wheels on it, but that's money issue. This tool will let you enter the line here is straight above the level of the tool, more or less. The tool handle is not round. It's axe handle shaped a little bit. The ferrule is pink because I thought it'd be funny. If you manage to break the wood so a ferrule has to hold this into there, it doesn't make much difference how it's held in. This will actually catch it more likely than bronze. So many of the commercial tools, I don't happen to own any of those, have a ferrule that far away from the metal absolutely useless. You want to introduce this so it doesn't hit on the outside. Find where you have material still to remove by feel, with the tool trailing a little bit. Pick it up level, cut the material. Pick it up level, cut the material. Search for the line you're following. And right about here, I run into the classic, where the hell is the compressor? Because I've drilled the center out already, I didn't need to bring my straight tool. Almost big enough to reach in there and start digging shit out. Excuse me, shavings out. If you want to get the shavings out and do not have a compressor, there's only one good technique. Well, if you have a wire, you can do that. Do not take the wood out of the chuck. You will never get it back in the same way. Some people think you can blow things out with a straw. Oh, you know what? So that on lock. Now reserve will work. No, it's still on lock. Okay, stop that. Now it's off lock. Doable only with a lathe with good speed control. I'm into about this level. My wall thickness is not bad. It ain't good, but it will do until bad time goes on. If you can line that up with the lathe, you need to be very careful if you're putting something on with power that you're actually threaded straight on. Because if you're not, you will screw up your hand, the lathe, probably your chuck, and whatever it is you're trying to make will become history very quickly. I seriously doubt anybody can see what I'm doing other than finding my path in, checking my cut right there, following my curve around. When I find heavier wood, feeding into it a little bit at a time. John Jordan pointed out that if you find the wood, find the edge of the wood, make a 1/4 inch cut at a time or less, an 1/8 of an inch. You don't have to be any bigger than John Jordan. What is with this thing on my head? Ah. Okay. I really don't have a lot more to say about hollowing, and I really don't think anybody wants to stand here and watch me hollow, except that the straight tool is an aggressive, mean, look like I turn my hand green. Tool that wants to catch. The bent tool, wherever I hit it, wants to push itself out of the wood. If you're just above center and it tries to, nothing much happens. So if you bring this in low, bring it up to your cut, slowly push it through. I have one of these that I've made as a negative rate cutter. It's slow. I have not yet worked on that as hard as I'm eventually going to. I'm real sure the guys with the carbide cutting machine have a very fast cutting method. They're expensive. You need to buy new cutters regularly, and I am cheap. And frankly, you don't spend that much time hollowing even something twice this size. I have the Ellsworth full-scale version of this. Hollowing is not so much the issue as cleaning up your mess you made hollowing. I'll try Don's power system. Don, I'm getting windier. It works.
It's called a compressor, man.
I have 4 or 5 of those at home. I mean, they're all heavy. This is just mostly a matter of visualizing where you're moving the tool, not getting the tool caught. Put something heavy there. Wow. If I can find it, take it out from the inside. Speed makes you feel like you know what you're doing. Okay. Once more for the experiment of, I have a horrible snag right here I'm going to have to clean up. With a compressor, regardless of its nature, grumpy old guy or mechanical thing or whatever, blow across. That'll suck the air out of there. Blowing in doesn't do a whole lot of water gut. I made a spoon exactly the way Cindy advised making a spoon. I have it at home. I know where it is, and it doesn't do me much good here. I really don't feel like this is likely to blow up in my face at this point. The minute you get cocky about that, is when they do. The hole this size you can't even lay claim to blind hollowing in here. The hole that size I can see fairly well where I am. I have a lip at the bottom I have to clear out. It is actually easier if you don't have a compressor, get one. You'll love it. It's the greatest way to blow messes around in your shop ever invented. I'm making shavings big enough that they want to jam in there, which is pretty well a good sign I've got a sharp tool. The problem with the Vic Mark Chuck, for those of you who are not familiar with them, is that little toy weighs about 8 pounds. And it approaches being a little hard to shake around like that. Is there any way to see inside there with the camera? Maybe. Move this out of the way. Yeah, it might be a light issue.
Turn on the light.
What light?
Flashlight. Oh,
Brilliant idea. You see the hole I drilled? I just need to scoop that off of there. Could you see that? I couldn't. Flashlight. Yeah, that must be flashlight. Yeah. Too squirrely.
yeah. I don't know how to, Don.
Don has cleverly gone off and hidden. Anyway, my point being, I have drilled a hole of known depth. All I have to do is go to that depth, and I know I'm pretty close to finish hollow. I'm going to give this a little fresh edge again. If I do this in front of people, somebody says, but you'll wear out your cutter real quick. I say, this cutter cost me less than $2. If I wear it out, I'm not horribly concerned. Thousand RPM. Find that hole. To the bottom of it. I have a considerable assortment of tools of this general shape and nature. They're all kind of boogered up because I've let them wear out. It's a bigger, smoother curve than the smaller tool. And I'm just going to clean up that bottom as best I can without going crazy. Fish for the center. Bring the tool out from it. I hope everybody's noticed that I have spent zero time doing this nonsense while I'm trying to cut. I observed a class being taught by one of our internationally known professional woodturners in shop here, and there were, I think, 5 lathes running, and there were 5 people down like this. And I will make a wager that the following day there were 5 people walking around going, "What happened to my back?" Your second grade teacher probably started giving you static about posture. And if you had good gym teachers, they gave you static about it all the way through school. When we evolved from climbing around in trees, we're supposed to keep this part of our body straight up and down as much as possible to keep balance. Head on top of the weight. The more you can do that, the better you feel at the end of 8 hours of messing around with this. If you're bent over, you better get a good chiropractor because there isn't anybody else going to be sympathetic. Questions? Mr. Don? Scared him away again.
I'm here. I'm trying to stay out of earshot as much as possible so that I don't hear the echo. Although even here I do. But we are about 3:45. I don't know how much longer do you want to go with this?
I'm going to comment on how I go about shaping the bottom of these real quickly. Everybody here knows how to sand. Everybody in the club probably knows how to sand. I've left a little more ridge here than I probably will before I start sanding. I have an assortment of healing tools for that kind of thing. It might or might not work. I'm just going to try and get rid of that one little ridge. And yes, I have my face shield sitting over by the side of the lathe. This is essentially a cup scraper for cleaning out the inside of egg cups. Oddly, it looks very much like sorry about the hole in the lathe. A miniature version of the larger, what do they call that shape? Anyway, this is one you build for yourself. Nobody sells one like this. I've done a little bit of rounding on the side so I can come up here and use it as a skew scraper. It's basically it probably started out life as one of those pointy nose things that's in every kit of cheap tools, which I cannot think what the hell they're for, so I get rid of them. Once again, I'm planning on taking this home and working on it at my leisure to get something I can put in the auction or build something else I can put in the auction. I have here a piece of genuine, for real, populous tremlins. Oh, aspen. I want to jam this up against. It's too small. So I'm going to have to kind of fake it. I quite probably will get another log if I happen to be where there was another log. Right there. Face shield again. Guesstimate the angle. Go gather high precision tools. Must be 100 different ways you could hold this. A vacuum chuck would be cool. I think vacuum trucks sound like the greatest thing since canned beer. I have all the parts to build one. I've had them for, I don't know, 10 years. I've never gotten to the point where I thought I had to have one that day. So there they sit. Make sure this is clear. Nope, it's not. There's a nice thing about a ground lathe bed that you can get away with this jacking the tail center back far better than on some of those that are quite rough. That's their sole virtue. This means you have to use WD-40 on it regularly. Unless you like rust. I'm able here because I made this design cut to see my whole curve. Tighten that a little better, please. Resettle that. I knocked it out on the very first touch. This would be nice if the hole I had there were big enough to wrap around the vessel. That would have involved bringing more wood. I'm close enough there. I can go ahead and cut this line off. See where I'm going. I can get rid of about not much of my truck fitment. And as many of you have witnessed, I could continue down to where I had nothing but a little tiny bit of sanding to do to refine that shape. I can still grip this by the amount of wood I've left on here. Critical to sanding the other side. So I'm going to call that done. Matching this curve is an eyeballing thing, getting it exactly right, following that all around, checking where you've gone. Try to find wood that doesn't have natural cracks in it. I will advise that anybody who wants to try this, start with a chunk of 2x6, chunk of 2x4, not terribly dry, or start with
Ed or Richard, if you can turn on your mic and let us know you're still there.
I'm just getting waiting.
I thought I heard you, Richard.
Nothing over here.
Just saw a note from Ed. Lost audio. Audio is back.
Hi,
Yeah,
Ed.
it was out for the last part of that.
Mine says unable to connect.
Okay, well, I think we're
A
pretty.
couple minutes.
What was that?
Only for a couple of minutes.
Oh, that we lost audio?
Yes.
I'm not sure which couple, unfortunately. We're talking about wood selection, finding something that is recently out of the tree.
Right after he started talking about when Bruce mentioned 2x6 to practice, the audio went out.
Okay, when you want to turn hardwood, kiln-dried wood is horrible. Old wood that's been sitting around for quite a while has all kinds of personality issues. Maple species that have been out of the tree for 2 or 3 weeks are probably about it. A little bit of flexibility does not hurt you, and it cuts easier. And if this warps, you're the only one who's ever going to know it.
Bruce, would you recommend green wood?
You know, if I were picking wood out of a pile, I would pick the wood that I had cut down last week, not today's wood. But yeah, pretty green. Not
3 weeks to 3 months.
not even 3 months. A month is probably about the realistic limit to get the easiest cutting. And you get nicer shavings, peeling stuff out of the inside. And again, if you get it thin enough, and this is probably close to thin enough, a quarter, it's not going to give you any real static. The only problem with green wood is you stop to go to lunch, you're dead. You have to finish, but if you can see this mess here, this is spelt and dry. And I'm going to be able to grind that out of there, but it's called wood grinding at that point. It ain't wood turning. And that is the second most boring activity I can think of. Getting shot at being the most boring activity I can think of. Instantly uninteresting. I'm going to clean up my fitment here for just a second because I just saw it needs it. And I can take this off this lathe, go home and put it on my Powermatic 3520, and it will go right back on and come on pretty close to straight. I will end up with a 2-inch cushion sander up in here, probably the same down through here where I will cut much closer in. Same detail out here, and I'm going to say this. Some of this, the only way to sand it is take a piece of folded sandpaper in your hand and push your hand back and forth. Excruciatingly boring. I will plane this side off straight. Ditto here, I have some edge spots I can't fix otherwise. Nice sharp block plane and you're done. I will have this ready by December or some year.
And hopefully there'll be a holiday party by then.
There will be a holiday party by then. I didn't say which year.
Yeah. Well, I want to take an opportunity to thank the three of you for this effort. It went much better.
Thank you, Sonny.
Yeah, Wasn't quite sure if it would go as well as it did.
No, I'm very pleased.
Having two guys to tackle you, to talk to.
Because you don't know whether you're getting through, whether you're getting the message across. If you decide to do one of these, pay an audience if you have to sit out there and go, ah!
Well, let's see. I don't know. I use your audio on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
My mic's on.
Okay. So because mine went dead. But we could do what I heard that they just did recently in Korea. They had mannequins in the audience for a soccer game, and then somebody realized that they were all sex dolls.
Yeah.
You know how soccer players are, guys. Come on.
All right. Well, my iPad's about to go dead, which is what we're talking on. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to check my notes to see who's on the cleanup committee.
Okay.
Well, I think Don and I are.
I believe that's who signed up, yes.
Hey, my wife is here and she just said she'd help. It's amazing. She's a nice
you.
kid. I got lucky.
All right.
All right, hey,
You do.
thanks, everybody. Great job.
I know that.
All right. Thank you.